Hi, everyone, and welcome to the FEDSA Meetup. Thanks for joining us. We're very excited tonight to have Prisma Ambassador Storyblok from Storyblok speaking to us about developing a hybrid backend with Prisma and a Headless CMS. I just want to do our usual upfront housekeeping as we always do, and I'm going to go through a couple of things before we get started. First of all, we just want to thank our recurring sponsors, who are NML and IO Digital, two Cape Town-based software design and development companies that help us to keep the lights on, so to speak. So thanks very much to them. NML has been a sponsor of us since we started in 2012, and IO has been a sponsor and helped us a lot with venues and things in the past. So we're very grateful to them for that. And then we have two special sponsors tonight. First of all, Prisma, and I want to give huge thanks to Prisma, especially Natalia, for helping us to set this up and all the live streaming and allowing us to use their StreamYard, and it's been really great to set it up this way. And we are also going to have a raffle for a book that has been sponsored by Prisma. So once again, thanks very much to them for that. And then secondly, we have, as usual, T-shirts and stickers and so on from Auth0, who I'm sure all the South Africans are familiar with, and we will send you a link to a form that you can fill in to get some of those T-shirts at the end of the presentation. Okay, a couple of announcements. So there's some upcoming meetups and events. Our next meetup will be with Gareth McCumsky, who is a serverless ambassador. He's been a big part of our meetup in the past. He's done a number of workshops, and he'll be giving us a talk in November. And then we're going to end the year on kind of a lighter note of sorts, where we're just going to talk about a few things you may not know about HTML. And that will be the organizing team presenting. In kind of local events news, DevConf, the biggest developer conference in South Africa, has just put out their call for papers for 2022. So you can check out their website. It's just devconf.org. And I highly recommend, if you're interested in speaking at a conference locally, to try and do that. I've spoken a few times, and it's an amazing experience, and they really take care of everyone. And then FEDSA have a strong relationship with the South African Product Design Slack and Meetup. And there's an event happening on the 29th of this month, which is a design systems panel discussion. You can join that by going to zapd.co.za, and that's to join the Slack, and then all the relevant information will be in that. And if I can just also make a plug for FEDSA, I will be one of the contributing members on that panel. So we will have FEDSA representation there. It's an update on our mentoring program. If you're not aware of this, every Monday from 5 to 6 p.m., we run a front-end mentoring program that is hosted by one of our members, Martin, and that's from 5 to 6 p.m. on Google Meet. And if you join the ZA Tech Slack, you can find the FEDSA mentoring channel there. It's open to anyone. At the moment, the topics are introduction to React. So if that's something you're interested in, please try and join us for that. Okay, you can find us in a lot of places. We've got, as I say, our FEDSA channel on ZA Tech. You can join that on zatech.co.za. We're on Twitter at FEDSA Community, but I must say we don't really do much on Twitter. We have our YouTube channel where we have recordings of all our past meetups and also all the mentoring sessions. So if you're interested, you can go and have a look at that. And then we have a lot of material from past workshops and all kinds of things up on GitHub. That's all freely available and open source, from our serverless workshops to CSS, HTML, JavaScript, etc. There's a whole lot of material there that you're welcome to go and have a look at. Right. So Auth0, as I said, is one of our sponsors. And if you're not aware, they are running their annual State of the Software Developer Nation survey. I'll again pop this link to everyone in the YouTube chat. It would be great if you go and fill this in. It doesn't take very long. And if you do fill it in, you can get your hands on yet another Auth0 t-shirt that they will deliver to your home. Okay, and then finally, as I mentioned, Auth0 are giving us t-shirts to give away for this event as well. And they've sent us a special form. And I will again pop this link in the chat. And you can go and fill in that form, and hopefully you will get a t-shirt and some stickers again delivered to your house. Right, that's it from me for introductions. I'm going to hand over to Facundo for our talk. And if you have any questions, just pop them in the YouTube chat and we'll make sure we get to answer them afterwards. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Facundo.
And Headless CMS, in case that we are managing different data sources in our projects, in case that we are creating a backend that will be consumed from the front end, which can be a website, a web application, or another type of applications. And we will see an example of how we can achieve that, or how we can start with like that. So, first of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Facundo Giuliani. I work as a developer engineer at Storyblok. Storyblok is a headless CMS that offers the editor for the compilator. I will mention more about this later in the talk. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm quite far from South Africa, but I would love to be there in person for a, I don't know, a future meetup, let's say. I'm also a Prisma Ambassador. I will be talking about Prisma too. I'm an Auth0 Ambassador. Auth0 is a platform that you can use in your applications to handle authentication and authorization. And I'm a Cloudinary Media Developer Expert. Cloudinary is a platform that you can use to manage video and images in your projects. If you want to talk about any of these products or services or about any other thing, you can talk to me. I'm on Twitter as Facundo Zurdo, or you can write me on my personal website, which is fgiuliani.com. So first of all, I wanted to make that division between front-end and back-end. The front-end, we can say that it's what's happening in the client, in the user that is visiting our website or using our product or our application. And the backend would be the platform that will generate all the services and all the logic that will be consumed by the front end to generate a great user experience. So this backend can be created by us. We can use third-party services. We can use existing services. We can create our own logic to consume different services or to use different tools. And this backend can integrate all of these tools and all of these options that we have available. We can work with databases that we can manage ourselves, or we can use services that are provided to work with databases. We can use services to consume or to do certain tasks or to use certain features of these services that will be later used by the front end of our applications. We can integrate our backend with existing backends or existing APIs. We can use serverless functions to create functions or pieces of code that we want to be living in the cloud and not maintaining a web server for that. And I mean, for this backend that we are going to create and maintain, we have a lot of tools to handle the data sources or the logic layer, let's say, that after that will be used in a certain presentation layers, like a website or a web application, a mobile application, a desktop application, or even we can use this backend that we are creating on smart devices like, I don't know, Alexa from Amazon, for instance, or a smart watch. One of these tools that we can use is Prisma. Prisma is an open source object relational mapper, or ORM. So what does this mean? We can use a product like Prisma to integrate a database, a relational database in our backend or our project. And using this ORM, what we are going to do is create a model that will make the work easier for us in the code that we are creating for our backend or our platform. So, for instance, if we are maintaining or using a relational database like Microsoft SQL Server or MySQL or PostgreSQL, using an ORM like Prisma, we have the possibility of creating an object representation of these tables to handle in the code of our application, and in an easier way to create queries, to manage them as if they were collection, as if they were other existing objects or other existing collections, comparing to data that we are handling in our application. So, for instance, instead of using SQL code to create data or to insert data in the databases, we can execute a function or a JavaScript piece of code that will generate the same query in the background that will be applied to our databases and creating the content. Creating a user is a very easy and example that we can follow to understand what's the concept behind this, but we can do more complex things or use other types of operations like creating a user or updating the information related to a user or querying the database to bring all the users that follow a certain criteria. The opportunities are a lot, and Prisma offers a lot of ways to do this. And really, I mean, it's making the work easier for the developer that has to create the code that will consume the data from the databases or create information in the databases. So why Prisma? I mean, why should we use this product? Because it facilitates implementing the object model. As we said, we will create objects that we can handle in JavaScript as we do with other type of objects in our JavaScript code. We will reduce the amount of code that we will create, because if we have to do the same using SQL code, for instance, or SQL queries, it will be probably more complex, or we will have to write more code to adapt the information that we are bringing from the database to be used in our backend on our project. We won't write SQL code because we will be using this object model and the object notation. And on the other hand, we are abstracting ourselves about databases specific details. So using Prisma and using this object approach, we don't know which type of database we are using in the background. I mean, we have to configure it and set the database, the database platform that we will use in our projects. But with the code that we are creating and we are managing in our projects, we won't know which type of database we are using, which is also cool in the case that we want to migrate our application to a different database platform. So let's say that we are handling now a MySQL database, and we want to move to Microsoft SQL Server. We won't notice that using Prisma. I mean, in the code, we won't notice the difference, and we won't have to do many changes besides the configuration that we will need to connect to the database. On the other hand, another service that we can use in our backend is a content management system. A content management system is an application used to create and manage digital content. So this will be like the diagram that displays how a content management system works. We will have an admin interface where the users will go to create and edit the content. Then we will have an integration layer that will manage the database where all this content is stored. And on the other hand, it will expose the content to be used in the presentation layer of our projects. In the case of the traditional CMSs like WordPress, Joomla, or Drupal, probably you have heard about them, or you know them, or you have used them. These CMSs have one, one issue. And the problem is that the platform, the CMS itself, offers a complete platform integrated, having the admin interface, which is the control panel where the users create the content, but also the view layer. So we are tied to a certain programming language and a certain way of presenting the content that the users create using our product. So in the case of WordPress, for instance, we are tied to use PHP, the programming language PHP, to create the pages or the presentation layer of our web application. And that is something that, I mean, it's okay probably for certain projects, but on the other hand, we are being limited to the technologies that we can use when we want to present the content that we are creating. So having this issue in mind, a new concept appeared, the concept of Headless CMS, which is a content management system where the content repository is separated or decoupled from the presentation layer. So you will see that the Headless CMS has the same admin interface where the users, the team members of our organization will go and create and generate the content that we want to expose to the users that will use our web application. We will have an API that will manage the database and will expose this content to be consumed from any presentation layer or any client. And here comes the magic or the good part. It's not only that we can use any programming language or framework or tool to present the content in our web application, but also that we can consume this content that was generated from other types of applications like mobile applications, desktop applications, or for smart devices like we mentioned before. So the content that is created once can be used in multiple channels in different platforms. So if we compare these traditional CMSs or monolithic CMSs as they were called, with the headless CMSs, we can see that we have the decoupled front end and the back end, and that gives us flexibility about how we want to expose the content that is created and how we want to handle this content. The developer experience and the user experience are the first-class citizen because we are offering a great experience to the users of our platform. I mean, they will use this admin layer to create the content and generate the content, but also we are offering a power tool to the developers that will be integrated with the framework or the programming language that they want or that fits the best for the use case of the project. And we can also have an omni-channel experience using the content that is generated once in different channels or platforms. Today, I will focus on Storyblok, which is a headless CMS that has two main features or two main differentiators with other headless CMSs. One of them is the visual editor. With Storyblok, we can create content seeing how the content is going to look like in our web applications in real time without affecting our production instance of the project, or without having to deploy changes or apply changes to the code, or having to do a developer process, let's say, to display the changes. We will do that inside the Storyblok application in real time without affecting the data. And on the other hand, Storyblok works with a component approach. So inside Storyblock, we can manage the content that we are creating following a component approach. So we will have reusable components that we can use in the different pages of our web application, and we can reuse the same presentation visual representation for those components in the front end of our application. So we can create, for instance, React components and reuse them and link them with components created in Storyblok. So all the information and the fields that we will use for these React components are linked, and that this link will be generated automatically for all the cases where we use these components that we created. So I think that those are the two main differentiators of Storyblock compared to other headless CMSs. Like offering this visual experience is different to having a form where you have to type and you have to create all the content without seeing how it's going to look like. Besides these two products that I wanted to mention, I also wanted to bring to the table this other technology, which is GraphQL. GraphQL is an open source data query language for APIs and a runtime for fulfilling these queries with existing data. So it's an unified query language that we can use for different types of services, and we can abstract on how the content is stored or how the information is managed. Following the GraphQL approach, what we can do is using the same notation or the same query language. From our front end, we can consume information from different data sources. These data sources have to implement a GraphQL server to expose the information using GraphQL. But instead of calling different REST API endpoints or having to do different operations, we can use this unified query language to bring all the information and only the information that we need for each case, and use that information in our applications. So for instance, we can have legacy systems, different microservices, third-party APIs, backends that were created by us, or I don't know, headless CMSs, databases. If they expose a GraphQL server or a GraphQL layer, let's say, we can query the content and bring content to our application from there using a unified query language. But also one cool thing that, I won't show in the demo today, but the cool thing is that we can link all these different data sources and platforms that we are using in our backend and expose that to a front end, and the front end won't know where the information or the content is coming from. So if we implement a GraphQL server, and we have different platforms like a database, a headless CMS, a third-party API, or etc., the query that will come to the GraphQL server will be only one, and we will return the content that is required to the front end, like if it were generated by our backend server or our GraphQL server. So this query language looks something like this. You can read about GraphQL, and I will share some links after the talk where you can read and learn more about it. But we are querying, and we want to bring the user with this ID, and we want to bring for that user, for instance, the name, the post that user created in the platform, the title of this post, only the title for this post, and bring the last 3 followers that the user had in our platform. And the response of this query would be just the fields that we requested for the entities that we requested. So you can see that we are bringing the user Mary, and we are bringing just the name because that's the only thing that we required. We are bringing the post that Mary wrote, and we are bringing the last 3 followers, the name of the last 3 followers, because that's what we are requesting. We are doing only one HTTP post request to the server. We are bringing all the information that we need and just the information that we need. And we don't have to be doing multiple REST requests and bringing different objects and modeling the content that we need based on existing endpoints. I will show you a quick demo about how to create a small hybrid backend, let's say, using different services where we can maintain our content and expose that to a front end. So I will show you, this is the magical page that I will create now. This page is using data from two different sources. We will have a database, a SQLite, which is a database platform, a SQLite database that will contain a table with a list of posts and the URL of this post. And on the other hand, we have a Headless CMS, which is a Storyblok, where we have the complete blog platform with all the blog posts and all the information for these blogs. I mean, the title, the user that created it, a header image. I will show, I mean, what I will create is this page that will display this list of posts based on the ones that are stored in the database. And we are bringing the information related to the post from Storyblok. This is how a Storyblok application looks like. You can see that here we have the real-time visual editor that I mentioned before. You can see that I'm displaying the local host. I'm pointing to the local instance of the application. I'm using Next.js, which is a React framework. If you don't know about Next.js, I highly recommend to read about it. It's kind of, it's not related to the talk itself, but it's what I use to create my website. I mean, this website that we are seeing is the one that I created. This is the home page of my blog. We have different blog posts here, and you can see that we have the title, a little intro of that blog post, the header image. In fact, I can visit this blog post. I'm inside Storyblok. Oh, sorry. I spent a lot of time, probably I was unlocked, but I can go to the content. Sorry, I can go to the blog. I can display here the blog post with, you can see the styling that is not being set by Storyblok, but this front end and all the markup is being generated by my application, by my Next.js application. I'm using Tailwind CSS for the styling. So you can see here that I have a blog post with a title, with a text, with a header image on, whoa, sorry. And I mean, what I can do in Storyblok is editing this content and all see in real time the changes that I'm applying with the components that I have inside my page, create new components, add new components, edit them, rearrange the components, and etc. And this will generate all the information related to my blog platform. On the other hand, if you see localhost 3000 in the same URL, but in this list slug or URL, what I'm doing is listing all the blog posts that we have available in Storyblok with the title and the intro test, let's say. So I will go to the code here, and this is the schema that defines the database that I will manage using Prisma. In this case, as I said, the provider is SQLite. It's a local DB file in my file system, living in the same folder of my Next.js project. We are using the Prisma Client JS as a provider because we are working with JavaScript. And the only model that my database will have is an article table, which will be converted to article objects, let's say, that they will have an ID and the slug. This slug is the one that I'm going to use and to grab to bring all the information from Storyblok. You can see that here is the folder where the database is and the schema living inside my project. You can also see that we have the package.json file. We will use the Prisma Client to query the database. And on the other hand, for Storyblok, depending on the pages, we have different packages that we will use. To query the information that we need for the list page that I displayed before, we will be using a fetch method from JavaScript, and we will do an HTTP post to the GraphQL server that Storyblock exposed. So we won't need any special package to consume the content from Storyblock. We have also other packages, but to handle this real-time experience, connecting the Next.js application or my application to the Storyblock application and display the changes while I'm using them in the application of Storyblock. And we can also use an SDK that is available for JavaScript, for React, for Next. We have a lot of SDKs available in Storyblock that you can use to query the Headless CMS using the REST API, but also bringing all the information, doing the queries to the REST API easier to handle in our application. You can see that here is the folder structure that any Next.js project has. I will go to the pages folder where we have all the routes that we support in our project, in our application. We have dynamic routes in Next.js that this will be depending on the URL that we are using. We will render different content. I don't want to go super deep into this, but this is the one that will generate the homepage for my website, the blog post, markup, and etc., bringing all the information from Storyblock using here the Storyblok client and calling the REST API to bring the stories, which will be the pages in our case. In Storyblock, we call the pages stories because it can be a page or it can be another representation depending on what you use in your project. And bringing the information, we are rendering some React components for the markup. We have the components here using Tailwind CSS and HTML. We are defining the styling of these components, and we are using the information that we bring from the Headless CMS, the title, depending on the post. We display, this feature post is the component that we were seeing in the home page with the list of the 3 posts there, and we display the image. We use the image URL brought from Storyblock. We display the title, the introduction text. We can use all of that in these components that are linked to components that were created in Storyblock with the information that is stored in Storyblock. But I want to go to this list page, which was the ugly one that was listing all the blog posts. We are using the Prisma Client here, and we have this method get server-side props that is offered by Next.js to execute whenever a user visits our web page. So in this case, we are using server-side rendering, which means that we will render all the content dynamically whenever a user visits this page, and we will execute this code for every user. So we will create a new Prisma client with this Prisma client that will use this schema or that will support this schema. We will use the method find many to bring all the articles that are living in my database, which are 3 in my example. And now that I have all the articles for each one of them, for each article, I will grab the slug of the article. The slug is the field that we are using in the table. And with this slug, I will use it as a parameter to use a fetch API. Here you can see that I'm creating a GraphQL query that I will execute through the GraphQL API from Storyblock. And I will bring the post that has this slug that I'm sending as a parameter. And as I only want to display the title of the post and the intro text, we have both properties here. So these are the only 2 fields that I will bring from Storyblock GraphQL API. Here we send the slug path that we want to bring. You saw that the content as it is organized in Storyblock, it was inside the blog folder. And if we have some data, we will return the post item, which is how the entity is called in the Storyblock GraphQL API. we are we will do that for all the articles that we will bring from the SQLite database. And once we have all the posts, we will return the properties posts to from this server get server side props function, and we will use this function, these posts, we will use them in this main function for the page, which is the one that is going to generate the markup for our page. And what we will do is, again, a map through this post, and for each post we will print this div with the title and the intro text for each one of the blog posts. So this will be all the code that will generate the markup for this page. Probably this is over engineering, but what I wanted to display is how to use a database using Prisma as the ORM, and also using a backend that supports a headless CMS like Storyblok. Maybe this is not the best example, or probably this would have been done in an easier way, but that's, I don't know, the example that came up to my mind and that I wanted to share with you as a good example. This can be extended, of course, or we can also offer a GraphQL server for another front end. Instead of using Next.js, we can use a front end framework that we want that will connect to a GraphQL server that can consume all the data sources and that can expose a GraphQL API that can be consumed from this front-end framework, and we can create and maintain this API separate from the front-end layer, the presentation layer. This fetch API method is created here. What we are doing is sending a query and some variables. You can see that we are using the GraphQL API from Storyblok. Using the fetch method, we are doing an HTTP post. We send some headers. We send this token, which is the token of the space that I'm trying to connect to Storyblok. We are bringing we have in Storyblok, we have two types of content, let's say, the draft version of the content and the published version of the content, depending on which environment are we working on. And, the body would be the query of the GraphQL query that we want to execute, and the variables that we are using, which in our case is the slug. We will get the JSON object that we can return to our application and that we are using in this page. So this is the little demo that I wanted to show you. We can extend the use of this platform. We can spend some more time trying the real-time visualizer of the Headless CMS Storyblok. We can also get different tables or more tables in Prisma that we can use to manage other type of information. We can also have, I don't know, a database that we are using in a different application and link that with Storyblok in this backend that we are creating. The possibilities are a lot, and depending on your use case or your possibilities, you can integrate these tools in the way that you need. If you want to learn more about Prisma, you can go to prisma.io/docs. Those are the official documentation site for Prisma. You can learn a lot there. You have different tutorials that you can follow to create the projects or apply Prisma to existing projects, or creating projects from scratch with a new database using different databases providers. You can go to storyblok.com/tp/headless CMS explain to learn more about what a headless CMS is, which is this concept, learn more about the differences with traditional CMSs. After that, you can go to storyblok.com/developers, where you have a lot of tutorials, guides, SDKs, videos, articles that you can read to use a Storyblok headless CMS. I mean, to connect Storyblok application that creates the content, linking it with any programming language or framework or platform, and the front end that you want to use, or even another backend. I mean, if you are using PHP or ASP.NET, other programming languages, you can connect to Storyblok, as it is an API that you can consume with your preferred way of consuming an API, or using the SDKs that are available there to make the work easier. Finally, if you go to howtographql.com, you will have a guided tutorial to learn more about GraphQL, doing queries, how to bring the information that you really need, or expand the knowledge that you already have about GraphQL. Is a very cool site, and it's free, of course. All these materials and this content is all available for free for you to learn to use these tools and technologies. So again, thank you very much for this space. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I hope you learned something new. If you want to connect with me, my user in Twitter is Facundo Zurdo. If not, you can go to my website, which is fgiuliani.com. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Facundo. That was really fascinating. I see we have one question from Khalib. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. He's considering moving his backend to Prisma, but he's waiting for Prisma to support Mongo transactions. Any thoughts on that?
I think that, yes, sorry. I think that there is already support for Mongo in Prisma, and they are working on it. Let me share one URL in the chat. But if you go to, if you want to start from scratch a new project, let me see. Oh no, this is, I think I have to go to the YouTube chat, right? Here it is.
Yeah.
If you go to that URL, you can see how to start a project from scratch using MongoDB. So I think that if that would be supported, they are still working on MongoDB, but you have something to start working with.
Facundo, YouTube chat is going to strip out a link. Maybe just pop it to me in the private chat, and then I can put it in there.
Sure. No problem. I mean, I didn't know if that was going to work.
Okay, I am adding that now.
There we go.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions for Facundo? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I just want to say thank you so much again. That was really great. Prisma, I'm going to straight out say I've never used Prisma before, but it looks fascinating what you can do. I mean, our front end framework of choice is Next, and we are definitely having more and more instances where we need to be building headless CMSs. So no one wants an old school.
With WordPress probably.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And the advantage you get from, just in terms of performance and ease of setting everything up, especially with GraphQL, is really fantastic. So I will be pointing my colleagues to this video to make sure they watch it. Yeah.
Sure. No, what is cool about Headless CMS, not only Storyblock, but any Headless CMS, is that you can use the presentation layer that you want. I mean, if you are working in a project that you are using other tools or presentation layer or programming languages, you are not tied to a certain presentation layer. I think that's the cool thing about the Headless CMS is more considering all the frameworks and tools that appear in the last years that you can get advantage of. I mean, about the performance of your applications or the tools that you can use to develop the projects, having to or being tied to a certain programming language or a framework probably is not a cool thing. So the Headless CMS is offering this flexibility is something cool to consider.
I have one other question about deployment. What would be your recommendations for, setting up your database, etc.? Cloud providers, is it easy to deploy on, say, AWS or DigitalOcean or Azure or whatever it might be?
Yes, well, I mean, AWS, Azure, I've used them in the past for these examples. Depending on, I mean, how big is the project, but I think that they could work. Probably, the thing about that is having to maintain this the database in the way that you are working. Well, I mean, you can also use a different database provider, like if you have, I don't know, a PostgreSQL server that is working remotely, or an Azure SQL server that you can. The only thing that you need to do is to connect to the database that is living in the cloud. You can use that connection string to connect from Prisma, from your application, and probably use a different server or a different platform to host your application. So in this case, probably you can use something like Vercel or Netlify, that are platforms that offer you a very cool experience when working with static sites or server-side rendering using JavaScript. You can use the JavaScript code and work with Prisma, but connecting to a remote database living in Azure SQL Server, for instance, or a PostgreSQL server that you can use.
Yeah, that's really great, because your application is separated from all of that, and you can
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, just the performance benefits alone are immense.
Yes, and not only that. I mean, you don't have to be maintaining and worrying about maintaining a database server, which exactly. I mean, I've done that in the past. I know that the tools have changed, but I've been working as a backend developer for several years, and having to maintain a database is not an easy task. So having I don't know. An organization like Amazon or Microsoft working for you to maintain the database, and you just worrying to connect to that database and bringing the information is something cool to consider. More if you are working with a small team, or you don't have enough team members to maintain the platform, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Great. Well, I don't think there are any more questions, so I think we can leave it for there. Thank you again. Thanks very much to Auth0 for our local giveaways, etc. Fill in that form. And a huge thanks to Prisma, and in particular Natalia, who has made this run all very smoothly behind the scenes. So thank you very much for that. Great. Join us at the next one. Cheers all.
Thank you very much.